Hey all, thanks for joining us today. My name is Shane. I run the events over at 10 Capital Network. We have another amazing event for you today, how FemTech is impacting healthcare with Wendi McGowan-Ellis of Cassandra Capital. If you have any questions throughout the presentation or throughout the session in general, go ahead and drop those in our chat box, which should be active. And please answer the polls at the end of each of our presentations today. With that, I'm going to bring up Wendi. Just start by giving us a brief intro of yourself and your fund. That would be awesome.
Absolutely. So I am Wendi McGowan-Ellis. I am the founding general partner of a recently launched Cassandra Capital. We are a female-founded venture capital firm based here in Frisco, Texas. We are a fund of funds and also a direct placement vehicle. So we are investing in 80% of our portfolio in Fund 1 across 4 other female-led venture capital firms, and then retaining 20% of the portfolio for direct investment into women-led businesses that are here in the North Texas area. That's our focus for Fund 1. So
awesome. Well, with that, let's go ahead and get your presentation started. I know I'll be running the slides today, so let me make sure I get that going as well. All right. Yeah,
right.
we're ready.
Okay, so today we're going to be discussing very quickly how FemTech is impacting healthcare. So we can advance. And so let's start with the history and origins of the women's health movement. Next slide. During the 60s and 70s, the civil rights and women's rights movements actually gave rise to the women's health movement, and that drew attention to the inequities in research and healthcare for women. So back in 1977, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration recommended actually excluding women of childbearing age from participating in clinical trials for most drugs. And while this changed in 1993, this policy actually resulted in limited understanding of women's health issues and introduced significant knowledge gaps. For example, today we know less about how conditions such as cardiovascular disease affect women, including their potential differences in diagnosis and treatment compared to men. So moving into the 1990s, the National Institute of Health Revitalization Act of 1993 made significant changes related to women's health research, requiring the inclusion of women and minorities in NIH-funded clinical research, so that today about half of participants in NIH clinical trials are women. And, while there's been a steady increase in the representation of women in clinical trials over the last few years, still the low recruitment of women needs to be improved, with females only accounting for 29 to 34% of participants in industry-sponsored early phase trials. So we still have a long way to go before we reach equal representation in medical research. Next slide. So statistics show that female patients are actually continuously gaslighted about their physical and mental health, whether it's heart disease labeled as anxiety, an autoimmune disorder attributed to depression, or ovarian cysts chalked up to just normal period pain. Many women's health issues are likely to be misdiagnosed or dismissed by doctors as something less critical. One study published in Academic Emergency Medicine found that women who went to the emergency room with severe stomach pain had to wait for almost 33% longer than men with the same symptoms. Yet female health and wellness impacts our global population and represents a cornerstone of any healthy society. The World Economic Forum identified that any investment in improving women's health was vital to creating a healthier and more equitable world for all, estimating that a $300 million investment in research for better female health could actually improve both direct healthcare economics and indirect productivity costs, leading to a return of $13 billion. Differences in men and women affect disease prevention and how they're diagnosed. It affects disease prevention, diagnosis, and treatments. Because women are often caretakers, the outcomes in women's health have also cascading benefits for groups such as children and the elderly. Women's health, in other words, contributes in a significant way to stronger and healthier societies. And as the FemTech industry recognizes that women's health encompasses more than just reproduction, this definition takes a broader approach. So considering women's health, the data incorporates both female-specific conditions, whether tied to women's reproduction or some other facet of women's biology, and general health conditions that may affect women differently or disproportionately. Women's health also includes general health conditions for which sex differences are not precisely known nor are sufficiently studied, such as the case with Alzheimer's disease. So next slide. The recognition of these sex-based differences is long overdue, but has been accelerating rapidly in recent years. Modern medicine was developed with the male physiology as the default. So here's a few shocking stats with regarding gender healthcare data gaps. Number one, women are 50 to 75% more likely to have adverse drug reactions than their male counterparts. Two, one of the first studies to prove that women are not simply smaller men, or in other words, that you can't simply change the dosing medications based on body weight, wasn't published until December of 2022. Number three, there is such a public education gap and opportunity for women to be educated about the symptoms, about any symptoms, and how they could be presented differently. Number four, only 4% of research goes to women's health, and half of that goes to oncology specifically. So in reality, only 2% of the money is going for research for all other women's issues. Number five, the absolute number of individuals living and dying from cardiovascular disease is higher for women than men. Actually, it's the number one cause of death in women, but the women's clinical outcomes have not improved as the same rates as men. So in essence, for many women in the US, the healthcare experience is less than optimal. Compared with even a generation ago, women today have many more life paths to choose from, and therefore a wider and more varied array of needs, but the delivery of healthcare has not kept up. Next slide. So despite progress, women still face persistent barriers to accessing healthcare services, such as cost, gender biases, discrimination, and stigmas about women's health issues and lack of funding. FemTech innovations can help improve this misrepresentation of women in medical research in several ways. Number one, it can leverage their existing customer base to raise awareness and interest, thus increasing registration and participation in clinical trials. Number two, improve the accuracy and quality of results by funding. Number three, encourage further research into gender-specific analyses regarding conditions that affect both men and women. So finally, by involving women in the design and development of FemTech solutions, these technologies can be tailored to meet the unique needs of diverse groups of women. So next slide. So what exactly is FemTech? FemTech is short for female technology and women's health. And this term was first coined by Clue founder Ida Tin in 2016. The term FemTech actually describes technology products, services, and those companies that are focusing on women's unique healthcare needs. It's associated with more gender inclusive and gender awareness in the healthcare system. By some estimates, FemTech is projected to reach a market value of more than $103 billion by 2030. So how much is the FemTech industry actually impacting women's healthcare? FemTech is providing solutions that enhance women's health in areas including just general healthcare, heart disease, oncology, diabetes, pregnancy and post-care, sexual wellness, reproductive system issues, fertility solutions, and chronic conditions and hormonal disorders. Next slide. So after years of being overlooked, we're seeing that FemTech is helping to change the entire healthcare industry, and we're seeing a rise in new startups. So a few of these first mover pioneers include, as already mentioned, Clue, a popular period tracking app founded in 2012, Ava, which is a fertility and pregnancy tracking bracelet established in 2014, and Maven Clinic, which is a virtual clinic offering continuous holistic care for family planning and other women's health and family services. And that company actually became the first US unicorn in the women's health and family planning sector in 2021. So next slide. The current global innovation pipeline reveals several mismatches between health investments and healthcare needs. So the gap highlights some remarkable opportunities for improving women's health within the female-specific conditions. So according to a McKinsey & Company study, which is pictured on this slide, the aggregate female conditions outside of oncology, again, comprise less than 2% of the current healthcare pipeline, even as women comprise half of the world's population. So there's some significant opportunities for healthcare providers to consider reallocating resources to female conditions, including maternal health. More than 800 women die globally every day from pregnancy and childbirth related causes, but also endometriosis, as 1 in 10 women of reproductive age is estimated to have endometriosis. And thirdly, menopause. Women spend more than a third of their lives in either peri or post-menopause states, and trends indicate that 1.2 billion women globally will be in these life stages by 2030. So slide 10, slide next. But we also have to talk about the challenges. So currently we have a lack of sufficient funding for service and product development. There's a lack of diversity in the industry simply because the technology sector in general has been criticized for its lack of women in tech. Thirdly, there's regulatory issues. FemTech companies that have developed medical devices must also obtain regulatory approval from the FDA, and this process can be time-consuming and expensive. Fourthly, the economic burden hindering smartphone penetration in rural and developing countries. Number 5, there's the lack of data. FemTech companies face challenges in accessing data that can impact their product development and improve patient outcomes. And then finally, fear of introducing a pink tax, which is an unfair levy applied to products when they are marketed to women. So next slide. So what's the future for and opportunities in FemTech? Next slide. There's currently a few hundred startups in the FemTech marketplace, and a significant percentage of these entrepreneurial endeavors are also owned and run by women. So we at Cassandra Capital anticipate seeing more investment from healthcare venture capitalists, which will grow the FemTech industry. Within the next 10 years, and with the help of affordable and accessible technology, this service segment, we're seeing a drastic potential for expansion. And although investors are yet to comprehend the impact of funding for women's health completely, the FemTech industry will grow exponentially over the next several years. And women in the US are in search of better healthcare experiences, one that meet their unique needs and different stages of their lives. So this promising opportunity has not gone unnoticed by VC and private equity firms, and investment in women's healthcare in the US surged to an all-time high of $3.3 billion last year. So next slide. As we wrap up, if there are three things that you recall tomorrow, remember this. As the FemTech industry continues to grow, three elements are vital. Consulting women. So when deciding on which FemTech companies to invest in, it's valuable to hear what women's takes are on those companies. Secondly, think long term and consider scalability, global scalability, in addition to just US. What technology is used? Is it a unique value proposition? Thirdly, know the team and the track record behind that FemTech company. Company's talent is obviously its greatest asset, and so we need to know the backgrounds and the track records of the team that are involved in these companies. Ultimately, FemTech is a game changer for women's health, and this emerging field addresses health disparities by creating solutions that help fix women's healthcare access gaps. So the bottom line is this healthcare gap translates into a major market opportunity. Increasing female representation among researchers, inventors, investors, and founders can create a more consumer-centric product and service solution that recognize and target women-specific healthcare needs. In a short period of time, FemTech has already demonstrated some really early impressive wins, and greater disruption is definitely ahead. So fine, that's it. Wrapping up. Next slide is a thank you. And next slide is for more resources for anyone who wants to go further into this topic. These are three data-backed books that are out in the marketplace. And there's also some articles on the Cassandra Capital website, which I can throw into the chat. Thanks,
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for your presentation. Great job. I had a couple of questions. Also, for anybody who is in the audience, feel free to drop your questions in our chat box, and we'll get to them as much as we can. So I did have a couple of questions myself, one being, well, less of a question and more of just an ask. Could you share some of your portfolio companies maybe, or some examples of companies that you think are exceptional and why you invested and what qualities, really attracted you to them? I think that'd be really helpful.
Of course. So we invest 80% of our portfolio across 4 other female-founded venture capital firms. One of those is Portfolia. Portfolia actually has an entire fund of their own that's focused on femtech. It's their third fund. They're calling it FemTech 3, and within that portfolio is a wide variety of femtech companies. So that piece is where we're slotting for femtech investment. And I'm happy to, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and put that the link to that in the chat as well, so you can see where we're investing there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. And then on the other side, what do you think would make a femtech investment or femtech deal less attractive, or maybe some reasons to look out for our investors in the audience, why you wouldn't, red flags or something you wouldn't want to see in a rising femtech company?
I think that, I think cost, if it's a high cost as a barrier to entry, if it's a direct B2C play, then cost obviously has to be a factor when it comes to adoption for women. I mean, especially globally, again, in these rural and developing countries. But then cost is also a factor when it comes to whether it's OBGYN or, any female specific doctor or a specialist. That has to be a consideration as well if the doctor is going to recommend that product or service to their patients.
Gotcha. Awesome. We did just get a question in from the audience. So
Sure.
Jeannie wants to know, how much income or profit do you recommend a company in femtech, in this case, have coming in before appraisal your firm for funding? Does that make sense?
That's a great question. So for direct investment, our companies are anywhere from 750 to 1.5 million in revenue. So we're looking for that. They've got a product and service out in the marketplace. They've got a team that's functioning well. We call it early growth stage. So we're looking at what's that inflection point of where an injection of capital of 1 million to 1.5 million would take their company from here to here.
Awesome. Hopefully that answers your
Did
question.
that answer the question? If it didn't, please let me know.
Yeah, if not, go ahead and put another chat in there. I had one more question for you before we close out the presentation. Again, if anybody else has questions in the audience, feel free to put them in as well. So in this case for FemTech, where's a good place, again, for our investors out in the audience, where would you recommend sourcing these deals, or who do you talk to find deals in FemTech? Because I feel like sometimes it's really hard to just go out and find them on your own, and you really need those deal flow sources and connections to get them. So what do you recommend there?
Well, that's a great question. I don't think I have a hard and fast answer for that. It's really just a matter of networking and keeping your ear to the grindstone. And, also networking within science communities or university, R&D programs, or where they're helping PhD students actually develop products. That's a great place to look also. So if you're in a town that has a university in your town, that's a great place to start. Just feeling your way through their scientific majors and looking for individuals who are developing companies straight out of universities.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a great point. Sorry. Also, got a couple more questions in here. Frank, maybe wants some clarity here. Thought Wendi said at the outset that her fund only invests directly in North Texas.
Yes. So 20% of the portfolio, forgive me for not making that clear, 20% of the portfolio is for female founders here in North Texas. 80% of the portfolio is across 4 other female-led venture capital firms that are investing in a wide variety of industries and at different stages. So those 4 VC firms are investing everywhere from seed stage all the way up to Series G.
Great. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for that clarification. Looks like we have one more question in the chat. At what point should a company go IPO, and is it earlier for FemTech because the need is so great?
That's a really good question. I think it depends on the company. So I'm not going to give a hard and fast number that they need to reach. But yes, the need, just because there's a need in the marketplace doesn't equivocate to IPO. You can grow a successful business all the way, up without going public. Private companies are doing this all the time. In fact, there's one within Halogen VC, their firm that has stayed private and is a FemTech company. But they're investing and they're, getting returns, but it's still a privately held company. Gotcha. So I don't have a hard and fast answer for that. I think it depends on the company.
Yeah, 100%. Is a good point as well. And then Irene was just asking what the name of the 4 VC firms that you collaborate with. If you could drop those in the chat for Irene, Absolutely. That would be great. Yep. Also, yeah, I'll drop some of your other links. It looks like you might have just sent them to host, so I can drop those in the chat for them as well. Great. Well, if anybody has any other questions, please feel free to drop those in the chat now. Wendi, you're free to answer them in the chat box if they come in as well, just as we move on to the next presentations. But yeah, I'll also go ahead right now for our audience and run a poll for Wendi. So if you'd like to follow up with her, please go ahead and answer that, and we will connect you afterward. All right. Well, thank you, Wendi. And
thank you.
Feel free to stick around and talk to some of our founders here. With that, I'm going to bring up Nicholas Kuhn from SEDEX Technologies to get his presentation started.
Okay, so I'm Nick Kuhn. I'm going to talk about SEDEX Technologies today, which is a consumer company, a little bit different topic. We're a company that's essentially commercializing an advanced material in the consumer world that has a very unique ability to grip to skin, and we've launched a whole range of products in that space. And it's all based on how geckos have this amazing ability to climb walls. We've essentially biomimicked that technology to create our products at Sedex Technologies. So we're based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We're currently at a $4 million run rate. We're a Carnegie Mellon University spinout with a very deep IP portfolio. We're currently raising $1 million equity round, and essentially super excited today to talk to you about our products. So I want to just talk a little bit about our technology. We create these microstructures that look like little mushroom shapes in our material that has a very unique ability to grip to skin. So what you see here on this slide is a video of our microstructures that look like mushrooms moving against synthetic skin. And this has a very soft texture that has this unique ability to grip the skin in wet and oily conditions. If you look at this graph, you can see we provide, this is the exact same material with and without our microfibers. And you can see that, you know, in dry conditions, we're about a 20% improvement. The red is with the microfibers and the black is without. And then when you get into a wet condition or like sweat, we're almost a threefold improvement, 250% improvement in the coefficient of friction, and the same for oily conditions. So what we've done is taken this unique material and created a whole line of consumer products. We started out in the nose pad area, which is a technology or an application that came out of a collaboration with Oakley. We now have 20 SKUs on Amazon for nose pads. So we have different thicknesses, different colors. We have a whole line for AirPods, AirPod Pro. And then more recently, we've launched gaming solutions. So we have 11 SKUs in the gaming space. And we're now working on sports grips for tennis rackets and baseball bats, bikes, etc. I'm going to play a video here just so you get an idea of how we market our product.
Finally, your glasses are comfortable. Natural evolution gave the gecko its amazingly strong grip. Our multi-patented Sedex technology duplicates the microstructured fibers on a gecko's foot for a revolutionary new way to keep your glasses comfortably and securely in place. Like a gecko's foot, the thousands of anti-slip fibers on each Sedex nose pad rest comfortably on the skin surface for a secure, relaxed, comfortable fit, even on wet or oily skin. Stay in control with the comfort, support, and zero slip adhesion of Sedex nose pads, inspired by nature, perfected by science. Order yours today.
So, you know, we see this as a huge market opportunity. There's about 4 billion devices, $43 billion total addressable market for our technology. If you think about it, eyeglasses, there's about 1 billion eye frames globally. These are eye frames that are like acetate eye frames, like suntan glasses, sunglasses, earbuds. So all of the earbuds globally, gaming consoles, there's 500 million of them globally. And when you include bikes, rackets, and bats, it's another 2 billion. So a total of close to 4 billion devices, which translates into over a $40 billion total addressable market. Now, we launched, as I said, early in 2020. We've had phenomenal growth. Last month, we were at 375,000 revenue. We're tracking to get to a 5 million run rate by the end of the year. We have achieved over 40% market share on Amazon in our lead category, for growing to that from nothing within 3 years. And if you look at these colors, the blue is the US, the gray is Europe, and orange is Canada, and red is Asia. So you can just see the growth track that we've been on, and we're growing in all these different markets. Future growth is going to come from adding new markets, so continuing growth in the US and internationally, We just launched in China on Tmall, so we now are going to be exposed to 800 million active users on Tmall, which is where the wealthy Chinese go to buy US products. We also continue to launch new products, and we're starting to develop B2B2C relationships incorporating our technology. And lastly, on the retail side, we are now launching in retail at the regional level. So I've got some of the retail groups we're working with. Probably most interesting is Curacao, which is a similar to Best Buy in the southwest of the U.S. Is introducing our product here in the near future. Very deep IP portfolio, over 20 patents granted, over 21 trade secrets. And we really have a strong level of protection for this technology, both from our patents as well as the processes that we use to make our products. The team is unusual in that we have a lot of advanced materials expertise, but we combine that with phenomenal sales and marketing folks. Our marketing person is, and a company is called The Machine. Carlos Tribino did the Tumi rebrandings. This is an example of his marketing experience. And then we use agencies to help us on Amazon in the US and internationally. So really combine this advanced material product with great marketing expertise. I'll mention Dina Gazarian, who is VP. We'll be at a 5 million run rate, close to 4 million in revenue by the end of the year, and we are targeting to get to over 20 million within 5 years. So the mix is going to grow from just e-commerce to more brick and mortar as we get into the further out years. Typical exits for a consumer product are 1 to 2 times revenue, 3 to 5 times EBITDA. So we think we'll be selling this company in the range of 20 to 30 million. So we're looking at a 5 million pre-money valuation. So the expectation is that investors should be able to get on the order of 4 to 5 times their investment back within 24 to 36 months. I've listed some comparables here. So these are other companies in the consumer products space and their exit values. I guess I'll mention one, Lizard Skins was sold for 50 million. They make grips for baseball bats in particular. That's their key area of expertise. So I think the numbers we're putting out are pretty reasonable from that standpoint. So I'll leave you with this slide. We've got amazing reviews on Amazon. These are some magazines that we've been in. So it's really an exciting opportunity for essentially to participate in the final investment that's going to be needed to take this company to cash flow positive and eventually to exit. So with that, I will end my presentation and open it up for questions.
Awesome. Wendi, if you have a question, that would be great. If you want to come up and ask your question. Also, if anybody in the audience has any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat as well.
Nicholas, did I miss a slide on the team? Did you talk about your team at all?
I did.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I mentioned, the founders of the company are, the founder is originally from Carnegie Mellon University. He's a professor. His name is Metin City. He is kind of a global scientist type. And then we have other folks who came out of CMU who are part of our team. So we have sort of the very sophisticated advanced material folks, but we also have merged that with experienced sales and marketing people in the consumer product space.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I don't have any other questions in the audience right now. I'm going to run our poll right now for everybody in the audience. But Thank you, Nick, and we'll move on to the next one.
All right,
Appreciate
thank
the presentation.
Yep, thank you.
So next we'll have, oh, and I need to turn your video on, Gautam. We'll have Tensor Health come up.
Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Gautam, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Tensor Health. Tensor Health is a Mayo Clinic-backed AI digital health company improving outcomes in physical medicine by gamifying rehab. So MSK care, musculoskeletal care, MSK care for short, in North America is under severe strain. 1 in 2 Americans suffer from some form of an MSK impairment or injury, but there's a severe shortage of rehab clinicians to be able to treat these patients, which leads to really long wait times and infrequent appointments, right? So on average, only about 2% of a patient's recovery time is spent under the direct supervision of a rehab professional, which leads to really poor patient compliance, because from their perspective, the entire recovery journey is filled with doubt and uncertainty. It's really not, there's no clear path to recovery, which obviously results in poor clinical outcomes. I've got a lot of personal experience with this. I dealt with hip issues for years now, and it resulted in me sort of throwing out my back every few months. And while I was able to keep it under control by repeatedly visiting the PT, no one was able to give me a clear, actionable pathway to recovery or methods to maintain my flexibility to warn me when I might throw out my back again. So my co-founder and I, who also has experience in the space, joined forces to essentially completely overhaul the way we deliver MSK care. And we built a management team that are experts in quantified health, gaming, wearable technologies, and go-to-market in physical medicine and scaling and exiting health tech startups. Lucas, who could not be here today, who is our CEO, is a serial entrepreneur with experience in healthcare and consumer wellness packaged goods. I personally come from the medical device world. I led and scaled product development at a Class 3 medical device startup, all the way through their seed, Series A, ID approval through FDA's Breakthrough Devices program. And our Chief Commercialization Officer, Gabe, has over 25 years of go-to-market experience in the physical medicine space, taking products like Tensor from 0 to 100 million in ARR at companies such as PowerBar, GameReady, and AlterG. GameReady and AlterG are 2 of the biggest brands in physical medicine. If you talk to any physical therapist, they will know them. It's an anti-gravity treadmill and a cold compression system. So he's been there and done this, and we're very lucky to have him on our team. Finally, Torsten Kanisch is our lead angel investor and sits on our board. He's the executive VP of commercial operations and digital health innovation at AstraZeneca, Japan. Importantly, we've also got a stellar commercial advisory board comprised of investor advisors with expertise in health policy, remote monitoring, managing reimbursement payers, and retail health. Okay. So our big insight around how we redo musculoskeletal care is to essentially turn the recovery journey into a clearly defined, engaging, multi-level game, which will provide patients with the motivation and certainty to be able to complete their therapy effectively. So why gamification? Well, firstly, if you think about it, gamification, or a game is the exact opposite of the rehab process today. In a game, a patient will have a clear map on how to accomplish their goals, know exactly where they are in the journey and what has to happen next. There's an immediate engagement when they enter the game environment. They have confidence that the present challenge that's presented to them is suited for their skill level, and they see an instant reward when they put in work. And then finally, and equally importantly, gamification also provides a sense of community and fun competition, which is the opposite of the loneliness that people feel when dealing with musculoskeletal issues individually today. And all of this obviously also empowers healthcare providers to be able to extend their care outside the clinic in order to improve outcomes and help manage their busy caseloads, which is a key problem in the healthcare system today. So let's take a look at it in action. This is a quick video. We've got these proprietary patented medical sensors that are able to measure recovery status and are able to track how the patient is moving. And then we convert those rehab exercises into games. So from the patient's perspective, they're playing a game, but from the therapist's perspective, the game's making them move in exactly the type of movement pattern that they need in order to be able to recover. All that data is then passed back to the therapist for them to be able to adjust treatment and flag patients that might require intervention. And the timing for this is right because as of 2022, clinics can make additional reimbursement for monitoring patients remotely in this manner. So it meets all the triple constraints in healthcare. So let's talk about the market. As I said at the start of the presentation, about 150 million people in the US suffer from musculoskeletal injury. So it's a huge market when you think of it at the macro level. But within that, there's a rapidly emerging remote monitoring market for physical therapy practices. So as I said earlier, as of last year, Medicare and private insurers are providing reimbursement for rehab professionals to remotely monitor patients using solutions like Tensor. And so that's going to rapidly increase the remote therapeutic monitoring market into a $6 billion market. And within that, we've got a beachhead focus of physical therapists or hand therapists dealing with hand, wrist, and elbow conditions, which is a consolidated market. So think of things like carpal tunnel syndrome, wrist fractures, tennis elbow, golfer's elbow, things like that. When it comes to business model, we've got a B2B SaaS business model. Essentially, every clinic that we add onto the platform generates about $14,000 a month in revenue with 86% gross margin. The primary reasons clinic adopt is A, because of the new reimbursement, they get an additional 10 to 20% of revenue per patient per month, which is significant. And secondly, they also become more competitive in the marketplace because they're able to triage their patient, reduce wait times, and improve outcomes. So it's a strong value proposition for a clinic. Secondly, obviously, the customer acquisition scalable in healthcare for two reasons. One is in healthcare, once you're in, and we have been able to successfully integrate. So we have a really sticky product that has been integrated into workflow. And secondly, just to stress, there's lots of opportunity for revenue growth at each of these accounts because we've started with a beachhead focus in the upper extremity. And as we expand to do the rest of the body, there's room per account to increase our patient volume. And then finally, I do want to stress that while there's hardware involved in the sense of our patented sensors, it is a high gross margin business because the hardware is reused. After the patient has completed their course of treatment, it is at the clinic itself, it's reused and provided to the next patient. And so that results in a 86% gross margin. So from a traction perspective, we've crossed the chasm from a theoretical to a proven business model. We have happy to report that we've just sort of graduated the pilot stage and have entered into commercial contracts with provider networks and clinics in the US. We have obviously developed a fully developed operational FDA-listed medical device that's being used at these practices. And we've integrated into clinical workflow at over 12 practices across the country. There's a clinical ROI that has clearly come through as well, which is that Tensor patients are more than 3 times more likely to stay compliant when compared to industry standard. And we have proven the ROI for clinics. Our clinic partners have received reimbursement for Tensor from Medicare and a variety of private payers like Aetna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, amongst others, where they're increasing their revenue per patient by between 10 to 20%, depending on the payer. And all of this has been done with proprietary sensing technology that was pioneered by me and my co-founder, and is protected by a granted US patent and pending in other geographies. And finally, we've got massive growth potential ahead of us. We're in active pilots at premier hospital systems, including Mayo Clinic, UCSF, and Cedars-Sinai. So we're raising a $750,000 convertible note round with 80% committed. The use of the proceeds is essentially to increase sales volume and scale operations to try and get more sales in the next 6 months. We're raising on a $7.5 million valuation cap, 20% discount, and 5% interest. When it comes to exit, there are really numerous exit opportunities for an M&A between 1 to 3 years. 3 big categories: either traditional medical device companies that are trying to move into the digital health space in physical medicine, or digital health companies that have successfully scaled in cardiovascular, mental health, and other such spaces, but have not moved into physical medicine. We think the business would be attractive to both these groups of companies. And we've got a detailed exit strategy right up with comparables that we can get into offline if anyone's interested in that. And so with that, I invite you all to join our journey in leveling up the experience for patients going through physical medicine treatment, and would welcome any questions. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Gautam. I want to invite Wendi to ask her questions. And again, if anybody in the audience has any as well, please go ahead and put those in our chat box and we will be able to answer those.
Thank
Wendi?
you, Gautam. Yeah, thank you, Gautam. That was a great presentation. My question is around, I'm going to call it programs. So the woman in the video was doing obviously a wrist program. How many different programs have y'all created?
That's a great question. And so the answer will be a little bit long, but just to sort of walk you through the strategy, right? So at the moment, what we've done is actually from a clinical portal side. So I didn't show you a video of the clinician's interface, but from a clinician's interface side, they actually prescribe exercises. And we've taken a lot of pain in making sure that it's very clinically geared. So they just think in exercises. We then translate that exercise into a game. So we've got this proprietary sort of mapping into an engine. So it's not actually a program for the wrist. It is an exercise selected by the therapist for that patient that then translates into a game. However, what we're doing then is collecting the data around what the correct set of exercises are and what the correct progression is for this particular patient diagnosis, because that doesn't exist in musculoskeletal health.
Right.
So the long-term goal here is essentially to build a database of what the ideal recovery pathway is by observing these interventions on the platform so that we can then upregulate to be a digital therapeutic such that it could be a tennis elbow program as opposed to facilitating the treatment of tennis elbow between a therapist and a patient.
Got it. Yeah, that makes total sense. Do you have any competitors?
Yeah, we do. So let me actually pull up a slide, if you don't mind. If I can do that quickly. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So bear with me. So there are three ways to answer the competition question. The status quo is the biggest competition, which is 80% of physical therapists currently send patients home with a printout of exercises and scribbled notes, right? So that's really what we're disrupting, and that's what would keep us up at night. We just need to make sure that our solution is as seamless for the therapist as printing out a piece of paper. And that's what we mean when we've said we've successfully integrated into the 12 practices, is that we really emphasize making it that simple to use. But then moving into the digital space, there are companies like Sword Health and Hinge Health that have proven the value of providing sensors to the patient at home, but we don't really consider them competitors because they don't cater to the physical therapy market. What they are doing is going to self-insured employers and saying, use our digital clinic instead of sending your member to physical therapy. Okay, so they are co-competitors, potentially acquirers for our gamified approach to doing this. And then within the physical therapy market for remote therapy monitoring, there are a couple of companies. So there's Include Health, Grippable, Keat Health, MedBridge, and Limber, these ones here. But again, they don't have our unique gamification approach and our sensorized approach, because the two things that matter is, can you give the therapist data to make decisions, which our sensors do, accurate data, and then B, can you keep the patient engaged, and the games do that. And so that's why, and that's really critical from a clinical outcomes and a reimbursement perspective as well. And so that's why we keep ourselves on the top right-hand side of this graph.
Excellent. Thank you, Gautam.
Thank you for the questions. Appreciate it.
Awesome. It looks like we have one question from the audience. Can you expand the use of funds? What does it take to scale your revenues, and are there opportunities to accelerate?
Yeah, sounds good. So use of funds literally is to increase the volume of sales calls we take, increase the inventory of devices we have in order to be able to activate more clinics more quickly. It's literally rinse and repeat the process that we have. We have a term sheet for a prize round next year that we're already set on. So this note is just to increase the revenue that we will get to by the time we get into Q1 of 2024. So that's the answer to the use of proceeds question. And then secondly, could we scale even faster? Yes, absolutely. We've essentially broken through, which in healthcare is a really hard thing to do. right, to be able to get into this contracting stage. We've proven the ROI, we've proven the clinical value. And so at this point in time, we've got like 50, 60 ICPs that we know would want this yesterday. We just don't have enough bodies and devices in the office to be able to get all of them at the same time. And so we're balancing preserving equity and raising capital to try and get as much of that as is sensible.
Awesome. Yep. Hopefully that answers your question, Scott. If you have any further questions, please go ahead and drop those in there as well. I did run a poll for everybody in the audience, so if you could post your interest there, that would be great. And with that, if we have any other questions, like I said, please run those through. But that is the end of our session today. And I want to thank Wendi, Gautam, and Nick for their presentations, and all of you in the audience for asking great questions as well. Please look out for my follow-up email. We're sending the recording out, as well as any connections we need to make as well. With that, we're going to go ahead and close out the session. But again, I want to thank everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.